Today on Locked On Red Wings, how big of an impact can we expect from Todd McLellan in his first full season behind the bench with the Detroit Red Wings?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Locked On Red Wings is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Available wherever you get your podcasts. And Scotty, we want to take a second to kind of focus in on the head coach, the coaching staff as a whole, but mostly talking about Todd McLellan as well as Steve Yzerman, the general manager, because we did a lot of player previews, right? And we didn't get an opportunity to talk about those who don't play on the ice but still have an impact on the performance that this team has with Todd McLellan and Steve Yzerman. We'll lead off with Todd McLellan and his staff. And Scotty, before we get to that, though, I do want to plug real quick. This is selfish. This is a personal plug. But, you know, I do the color commentary for Oakland University. They play their first game this upcoming Friday at 8:55 p.m. I know it's a late one, but it should be a good one. They're playing an exhibition game to start the season off against the Fresh Coast Freeze of the USPHL. Should be a fun exhibition game before their home opener a week from this Friday. That'll be on September 19th. That'll be against Northern Illinois. But their first game of the year is an exhibition this weekend, against the Fresh Coast Freeze, September 12th, Suburban Ice, Rochester, 8:55 p.m. This Oakland team has gone through some rigorous recruiting this offseason, doubling the size of the roster, finally getting back to having a full roster and then some. So the skill level's higher. They'll have fresh legs. There'll be accountability. And honestly, the most exciting player that Oakland University is going to have this upcoming season. The player I think most people are looking forward to seeing the most is Patrick Zarnecki. He's a guy they recruited. He's played in the NAHL, the USHL with the Madison Capitals and the Omaha Lancers, and he's played in the BCHL. So he's been around with some pretty major junior leagues in America. In hockey, coming home, because BCHL is British Columbia Hockey League. He's coming back home to Michigan, and he's an Oakland University student. He's playing for his hometown club, and it's going to be really exciting. So I just wanted to plug that. You'll be able to watch us on YouTube, too, if you don't want to make the trek out to Suburban Ice, Rochester for the first game. Tickets are $10 at the door.
Great commentating, I hear, that OU has.
Yeah, Corey really carries it, because that other guy's not very good.
No, I agree. Yeah, that's where I was going with it.
So it'll be available on YouTube, but of course, you're more than welcome to come to the game. $10 at the door to watch Oakland University. Woo! But anyways, let's 3 minutes in. Took more time than I probably should have.
No, I love it. I love it. Support the boys.
Support the boys. ACHA D1 hockey. It's fun. Club hockey's fun. Never forget that Vegas UNLV's club team beat Denver last season. So ACHA, put some respect on the name.
Dang right.
Scotty, Todd McLellan is going to have his first full season behind the bench with the Detroit Red Wings. And I think of all the people that are on the ice and off the ice, I think expectations are probably highest for the head coach. And I think the main question here to ask you to lead things off is, how big of an impact do you think it is realistic for us as fans to expect of a head coach?
Yeah, so I think immediately everyone just kind of wants to go right into win totals, which obviously makes sense, right? You're talking about the head coach behind the bench and whatnot. I do think that it's important to kind of articulate exactly in what areas we are expecting impact, because that will directly correlate in some instances to wins and losses. Obviously, I think the biggest one that we have mentioned all summer and that we will continue to mention throughout the preseason and that everyone will have an eye on early in the year is the special teams, and specifically the penalty kill, because it was just so horrific last season. So we're hoping that can take a step in the right direction. So I think that's, stuff like that. That's obviously one thing. I think another thing that a lot of people would really like to see improved from the Lalonde era, I guess I'll say, is 5-on-5 play, right? This is a team that at 5-on-5 hockey under Lalonde was terrible. Like, we can just call it what it is, man. This team was not good at 5-on-5 under Derek Lalonde. And a lot of that had to do with the style that he coached with, and amongst personnel, plenty of other things. But I am very intrigued on, you have a full training camp to implement the system. You have a full preseason to kind of get your legs under you with this system. Is the even strength play going to improve as well? I think it's kind of impossible. Well, I don't want to speak too soon here, knock on wood, for the penalty kill to get worse. So like your like gets better just because, to an extent, just because it can't possibly be as bad. The 5-on-5 play has been bad for a while, like years and years and years. And so I hope that, I think that's something that I'm really kind of focusing in on early in the year, and hoping that there's a direct, a kind of clear and obvious change, I guess, in that department. But I mean, in terms of win-loss or point total or anything, I don't think there's like a bar to put there. I really think that the fan base at this point just give us some semblance of consistency, and the rest of it will solve itself. They have been wildly inconsistent for 3 straight years now. They have been hottest team in hockey, coldest team in hockey, hottest team. Like it's so dramatic, the peaks and valleys. And so I think that honestly, like if you can just get to a similar point production in every month, taking care of business, maybe splitting long road trips or something. Like if you can just be consistent throughout the year, you're going to give yourself a chance to be one of those wild card teams in the postseason. I think that single-handedly will kind of solve a lot of the problems this team has faced.
So let me start with your last point, because consistency is the biggest thing, right? But we need to put kind of a definition to consistency, because consistency on itself, like if you're expecting them to be, a 550 win percentage every single month, that is impossible. There's ebbs and flows, right? Yeah. Like consistency in this instance means you're not getting, your losing streaks aren't extended, and your winning streaks, while you want them to be as long as possible. We had 2 7-game win streaks last year, but you're more often than not cutting losing streaks short, where before you would spiral. You don't get into those long spirals. You might go on a 3 or 4 game losing streaks
and miss the postseason
because your March again was terrible. Like consistency in this instance means the ability to stop losing streaks before they get out of control. You might still have a 4 or 5 game losing streak.
You will.
But this way, because that's just how hockey goes.
Right.
But this way, it doesn't become a 6-7. You're able to string together 2, 3, 4 wins in a row, and then maybe lose 1 or 2, but then get back to winning one or two more. But it's just about the ability to stop losing skids before they really spiral out of control. That's what we mean with consistency, and that's what we need out of Todd McLellan. And that, again, obviously a lot of that has to do with mindset, getting the players to believe in themselves, and also what Todd McLellan is trying to get this team to do on the ice. And you mentioned system as well. And one thing that gives me so much hope with Todd McLellan is the fact that he said last year that he's going to try and find a system that works best for the players that he has. With Derek Lalonde, I loved everything Derek Lalonde preached, but it did not work with the players he was given.
Square peg, round hole.
Right. It almost seemed, and I'm not in the locker room, I don't know for sure, but it seemed he was almost stubborn. This is the style we're going to play, and it stifled any offensive creativity this team had, and some of the players basically said as much going into the coaching.
It was
change.
A team that was terrible defensively and had scoring, and they were like, we're going to play low event hockey and not score very much. It's like, okay, well, you're not really,
you wanted to play like the Carolina Hurricanes, and they just did not have the personnel for that. And part of that's on Yzerman. Like, he hired Lalonde knowing this is the style of play that he wanted, and then he didn't give him any players outside of like Moritz Seider and Dylan Larkin, who have excellent two-way games, that can play that style. Yeah. So it's just, I think that while Todd McLellan came from LA in his last stop, and they're a very defensively sound team, I don't really expect him to implement that style of team here because of the fact that that's not how this team is set up. Now, I want this team to get better defensively, but the writing is on the wall. This is not a very good defensive team outside of a handful of players. Find a style that fits this kind of offense-heavy team, and Hope you can outscore your problems. Again, you want to get better defensively, not saying they don't try to do that, and I think they can be better defensively, but you look at up and down this lineup, you have way more offensive scoring power than you have defensive depth.
For sure.
And you need a system that you just get the puck more, and by having the puck more, you don't have to play defense as much. So I do have a comment on your special teams thing, too. I have statistics, too, because Todd McLellan's partial season with Detroit last year did give us a lot of reason to hope. Just the question is how much of that is a new coach bump, how much of that is actually Todd McLellan being Todd McLellan. We'll talk about that in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings, so stay tuned. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You're going to love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty, you mentioned the special teams too. And I do want to point out, Red Wings obviously had, fourth best power play by the end of the season last year. Going into Todd McLellan, right, December 27th is when he began, they had the 11th best power play. After Todd McLellan joined, they had the best power play at 30%. The power play already was not a problem, but after that presumed new coach bump, it became not just a top half of the league power play, but the best power play in the league at 30%, which is insane. The penalty kill, Scotty, did not move up in the standings at all. It stayed at 31st in the NHL, but it did improve by 3%. That is not enough. But I have a couple other statistics for you, and this was pointed out to me by a friend. The Red Wings penalty kill had the 5th fewest expected goals against on the penalty kill all season long. So despite the fact that their results were terrible, the data shows that they actually should have had a better penalty kill than the results they were given. They had a 23 expected goals against on the penalty kill, which is the 5th fewest in the NHL after Todd McLellan joined as head coach of the Detroit Red Wings. Their high danger chances against, Scotty, it looks like 6. I got to scroll back over to see the exact number. It was 7th. They had the 7th fewest high danger chances against on the penalty kill after Todd McLellan joined. It's their save percentage. The goaltending was not bailing them out on the penalty kill despite being put in relatively good positions. And that is still a problem. That's not a problem necessarily. We have to wait and see how that unfolds. But Cam Talbot and John Gibson had amongst the worst save percentages on the penalty kill in the league last season, playing behind Detroit's penalty kill and Anaheim's penalty kill. But the analytics suggest that the Red Wings should have had better results on the penalty kill than they were actually getting. And it's not all on the goaltending, but the goaltending save percentage does show that it wasn't good enough. At the same time, though, we knew this was an unlucky penalty kill. We were saying it all season long. And last season, the season prior to that, they were 16th. So I don't necessarily believe the Red Wings penalty kill actually has to change all that much to get better results. I think they were largely unlucky on the penalty kill last year. Not to say, again, they definitely share some of the blame because they're the players on the ice, and in a lot of instances, you create your own luck. But the expected goals against was 5th fewest. The high danger against was 7th fewest. They put themselves in positions to have better penalty kills, but the results just weren't reflecting that. So I just think a lot of it is kind of going to find its own level naturally this season. I think that kind of supports what you've been saying, too, is what changed between 2 years ago and last year? Largely the same players on the ice. How do you go from 16th penalty kill to 31st, besides just sometimes a little bit of bad luck going your way?
Yeah, and I hope you're right. I think we'll see, man. I really am interested in what the game plan is going to be with the kill in that regard, right? Like, Is their mindset going to be similar where it's just like, oh, like we can try something kind of similar and just water will find its level? Or are they going to, I don't want to say completely overhaul it because it'll be still a lot of the same players, but maybe kind of revamp the system or whatnot. I'm pretty interested in how the penalty kill looks, in camp and in the preseason.
Yeah, they were relatively a clean team too. They didn't take a lot of penalties either. I believe
that was something they were actually really good at a majority of the season. I think it fell back down to earth a little bit in the last month, but for a while there, they were one of the fewest or one of the least penalized teams in the league for a while in the middle of the season.
We also saw a huge boost in 5-on-5 numbers too under Todd McLellan's leadership. They were, for example, like you go to Corsi 4 percentage, right? Just pure, not even an advanced stat. We're talking amount of times your team tried to shoot the puck versus the amount of times the other team tried to shoot the puck against you and getting the percentage of what was more. Underneath Derek Lalonde, the Red Wings had the 30th ranked Corsi 4 percentage at 46%. That's how heavily they were getting outgunned in a given game. Under Todd McLellan, that jumped all the way up to 16th at 49.4. You want that to be over 50%, but they were literally middle of the pack at 5-on-5 offense with Todd McLellan as their head coach. And a lot of that has to do with, morale boost, new coach bump. But if that is real, then the Red Wings will have an opportunity to make the playoffs. And that's where I think, obviously you need growth from players like Marco Kasper and Simon Edvinsson, Scotty, but Todd McLellan carried a 5-4-1 win percentage with the Detroit Red Wings, and that includes a terrible March.
Yeah.
A 5-4-1 win percentage likely gets you into the playoffs over a full 82. So there is an opportunity here for the Red Wings with Todd McLellan, if this is more than just a new coach bump, that there could be a team that yesterday we predicted them to finish 6th because we hadn't seen it to believe it. But one of my reasons to believe is Todd McLellan and his coaching staff behind the bench and the impact they're going to be able to have with this Red Wings roster.
For sure. And I think that is, man, of the X's and O's stuff we talked about, that probably is the area that everyone is kind of looking for the most improvement in, is that 5-on-5. Obviously, some of that is just personnel. Right? Are you going to find somebody to fill out that top 6? Is the depth, forward group going to be able to produce offensively? Are you going to have one line that you just completely punt on scoring like Lalonde did? Hopefully not. I think that there is a lot that will kind of be answered relatively early on in that regard. And I agree. I think 5-on-5 plays a big part of that.
Yes. Scotty, why don't we head to a quick break? Unless you have anything else to add about Todd McLellan, and then we can talk about Steve Yzerman.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, segment 3 coming up. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, we were pretty firm in our belief on what we were saying about Steve Yzerman going into the offseason. We said this had to be the offseason where they make a splash to improve this roster. When we said that, we did not understand that nobody would make it to free agency and nobody would be in cap hell, so they wouldn't be pressured to make a trade. So, I guess the question here is what does this season mean for Steve Yzerman? Because we were saying that he should be on the hot seat, and I still do believe that. But I also understand that he really had his work cut out for him. Every team in the NHL is asking the same question. How did we get better? A lot of teams got worse or stayed the same. Very few got better. What does this season mean for Steve Yzerman, in your opinion?
I think that this season is... Well, in terms of, what we're looking for kind of throughout the regular season, is an aggressiveness to win at the NHL level, right? And so I think what that really entails is no one wants to hear the same song and dance about a prospect isn't ready. And I'm not saying rush guys. I'm not saying just call them up to call them up. I'm saying if there is someone who is clearly too good for the level that they are at, because that's been a big complaint in the Yzerman era, has been the over-marination of some prospects. if there is someone that is clearly ready to go to the next level, like you need to win at the NHL level this season. And if there is anybody, I don't care who it is in the organization that could potentially do that, or that is possibly the best option to do that, they need to get an opportunity this year. So I think from like what can we see out of the front office to get that, ship righted, I guess I'll say, or get, this team back to the playoffs. I think you're kind of looking at it from that perspective. But to actually answer your question, not just make up my own, I think that really this season means, I think it honestly means something about the core that is locked up long term. If you have a really great season from Seider, Raymond, Larkin, and then presumably some young guys thrown in there, Edvinsson, Casper. You want to even throw like somebody like Gibson in there, sure. Somebody that, players that have the potential to be here long term, or that will be here long term. Then I think that that's a somewhat of a win, no matter what. Like, that's just like, okay, the guys that you are building this future thing around are at least in place and are good. I also think that if those guys all have good years and are healthy and you still miss the postseason comfortably, then that is also a knock on, pretty obviously, a knock on Yzerman, because it is the continued failure of bringing in pieces to surround them to make a roster good enough to make the postseason. And I think that continues to be the biggest downfall of this front office and of the Yzerman tenure and of the Yzerman era, I guess I'll say, is just the lack of NHL exterior talent that has been brought in as opposed to, the homegrown drafted guys. So I think, to put a bow on it and stop rambling, like I really think that this is an important season just to regain some faith from like some of the fan base, man. Like this is a really important season to just kind of prove like, hey, this thing is actually headed in the right direction, and we're not just in, I call it like 2010s Pistons territory, where it's just you're one of the best teams to miss the playoffs every year, and you don't ever get better and you don't ever get worse.
Who's our Andre Drummond?
I say this as a compliment. I'm not sure there is quite anybody on this roster like Andre Drummond.
We cannot keep, this is where I struggle. Because with the benefit of hindsight, it's easy to rescind and backpedal some of my absolution to how I was absolutely like, Yzerman's got to do something this offseason from earlier in the offseason because of how it played out. Like, I can't blame Yzerman for not getting some of these big name players. There are some that I'm like, I think you could have pulled the trigger on, but I understand, like, they were in it and then they just got turned down for a better package. Keandre Miller, for example, it's reports are at the Carolina just had a slightly better package, and that's the one they opted for. Everyone stayed where they were. Only like 2 or 3 good free agents left, and they already knew where they wanted to go. They had a select few clubs in their mind when they left. Because of the fact that the salary cap rose the way it did, no team was under the pressure to acquire or make a trade to free up cap space. So there were really very few options for Yzerman available to make this team better. So it's really easy for me to sit here and kind of backpedal on some of my, my firm stance that if he doesn't, he's got to be on the hot seat going into this season. And then at the same time, going into this season, if they are at like around the trade deadline, kind of still in that mix, I wouldn't be opposed. The last 2 seasons, I was like, buy. Get this team needs to make the playoffs. They need to get better. But knowing who's available at number 1 overall, this would be a season where I wouldn't be opposed to selling off and trying to get a better draft pick if it meant getting better ping pong balls for Gavin McKenna. So this whole offseason and this upcoming season, if this team isn't in a position to win, I'm like, I really struggle with it because, again, I don't want to keep kicking the can down the road with Yzerman. He needs to be held accountable at some point because this is his roster. These free agent signings that he has made that haven't worked out are his. We're in this position because of the choices that he has made. You know, the good and the bad. That includes the good, that is Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond, Simon Evanson, Marco Casper, and those players' development. But including the bad, that is Andrew Kopp's contract, Ben Sherrod's contract, which don't look as bad now with the salary cap rising, but, you know, those could have been more productive players. Like a Vinny Trocheck, for example. That was an Andrew Kopp year. So it's just, I really struggle with what it means for Yzerman. I think he is feeling the heat. He's a competitor. I think he wants this team to win. And I just, what does it mean for Yzerman? I almost hate to say it, but I don't really have an answer as of right now. I don't know.
I just completely, and maybe this is just like,
is it okay for me to be unsure?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think the only thing you said there that I like really, to be honest, adamantly disagree with is like the McKenna thing. If you truly are going to just like sell off and do that, then you are essentially saying that this core cannot win without somebody like that. Because then you're saying that okay, like we need that. It's not even worth trying to win this year, or else because we literally, this core is going nowhere without a player like that.
So allow me to clarify a little bit, because I was kind of all over the place. I was sifting. These are thoughts I've had for a long time about this offseason in particular, especially after some of the declarations we made going in. If they're like 1 point out or in a playoff spot at the trade deadline, I'm not selling off. But if they're like 6, 7, 8 points out, you know, you do your soft sell. You kick the can down the road and give yourself a better opportunity. That's kind of what I'm talking about. I'm not saying if you're 1 point up in a wild card spot, sell off for Gavin McKenna. Right. But if you're comfortably out of it, don't buy, you know, give yourself that opportunity. That's more what I meant.
Yeah,
which is what they would do anyways in that situation.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. It's like that's not a McKenna specific thing. Like if they were out of it, they were gonna soft sell kind of always. But I get your point that like this year is certainly different. I think really my biggest thing is just aside. This is so not analytical, and I want to preface this with that. What I'm about to say with that, this is like, you know, quote unquote old school, just like gut feeling thing. Okay. I don't care about what the stats read at the end of the season. I don't care. You know, I'm not looking for like a specific point total, like, oh, they have to hit this point total or else, you know, if they're below that, I don't trust Yzerman. If they pass it, then I do. Like, I don't think it's that black and white. I just literally at a base level, the most basic level you can have. After game 82, I just want to be confident and have faith that this core can win a cup someday. That's literally it. I don't care if that means that they're in the top 4 in the division or if they're 6th, like we predicted. But like, oh, they get hurt a ton the last 2 months of the season and all their best players get hurt and they fall out of it. Or, oh, you know, they have whatever, like they're like you said, 8 points out of it, they soft sell, but then actually have a decent second half and like miss the playoffs. But like, I don't care. I don't care. I literally just want to be at a point where in mid-April of 2026, I want to look at this roster and be like, you know what? If they get the right pieces to put around these core players, this thing can work. Because right now, I think the fan base is starting to honestly get impatient to a point where that's even coming into question.
Well, and I think that's part of the question, too, is when you ask what does it mean for Yzerman, it's in what context? We have this conversation. In context of ownership, I don't think it means anything. I think Yzerman is fine regardless of the outcome because Ilitch believes in Yzerman's plan. But we've seen it in the comments. Like, the fans are already a good, you know, it could be a vocal minority, you know, people who are upset are often the loudest on social media. But there's a lot of people who are already questioning Yzerman or calling for him to be fired. I'm not quite there, but I understand the impatience. I I literally have never been the host of this show for a playoff game. And this will be our 5th year doing this together. And it's been 10 years since they've made the playoffs. They haven't made the playoffs since I was a sophomore in college. Like, it's at a certain point, it becomes time. So what it doesn't mean for Yzerman, I think that it is an important year. But I also don't think there's going to be consequences for falling short of expectations again. I think that's the answer. I don't think that there are necessary consequences from ownership. I don't think that with ownership, he's on the hot seat. I think fans will continue to grow frustrated. I think Yzerman himself will continue to grow frustrated because he wants this team to win. But I don't think that this really means anything. That doesn't sound... I think it means something, but I don't think he's under duress of getting fired, even if this team falls short again this year, because the Ilitches kind of just believe in him.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's a belief thing. I mean, we don't have to unpack that whole can of worms. But I mean, as somebody who has spends a lot of his time covering Ilitch-owned teams, I think it's I don't even know if it's faith is more so of just like I don't even know if there's a word I can use to describe it. Just like, oh yeah, like set it and forget it. Yzerman's in charge. Like, there's a salary cap to the sport. Like, X amount of dollars I know is going that way. Whatever.
Yes. I don't know if I accomplished anything with my rambling, but that's kind of a good representation, though. It's like it was honest. That was genuine. The thoughts are all over the place when it comes to the Yzerman tenure at this point, because we're in this spot where we're just kind of stuck. And I don't know what the best course of action is. If I knew what the best course of action was, I wouldn't be sitting in a desk chair in my basement. You know? I mean, I'd be working with Steve Yzerman to get us out of this. But, Scotty, any final thoughts?
We've all.
All right. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.